So we're coming back to our premise here about being the love that you are. And I have a quote, Pema Chodron. Her quote is simply, "We don't need to change ourselves." And with that, I emphasize, or I see in that, this underlying essence of us being love. We don't need to change ourselves.
Here's another quote. Daughter, spend your life loving and not seeking love. The ocean need not seek water. Daughter, spend your life loving and not seeking love. The ocean need not seek water. Dr. Jaya.
So we're going to talk a little bit about definitions. We're cranking out the Oxford English Dictionary for a moment. And so I'm going to read a couple of definitions and then talk a little bit about some of my use of the word love and interactions with that word. So love is a noun. It means an intense feeling of deep affection. For example, babies fill parents with feelings of love. Or it could be a great interest or pleasure in something. For example, his love for football. Love can also be a verb. And in that sense, it might mean to feel deep affection for someone or something. He loved his sister dearly. Or it might mean liking or enjoying something very much. I just love dancing, for example. And those are helpful at times, but sometimes, not so personal. And so I know in my history, didn't use the word love very much growing up or being when I was younger. And it was something just regarded for very special people, very special situations. So it was very rarely used. I used it rarely. And, through a lot of the work that I've done and much of it with Jim and others here, I've really expanded that and allowed myself to use the word and to really feel it. And as Jim mentioned, through one experience in particular, the Enlightenment Intensive, I really realized that I am love. And so, that experience is a great gift that informs me and has helped me, but I still flash back, or I still slip back into those old ways of being stingy with that word. And who do I use it with? So it's an interesting dynamic that never seems to end. I have a quote here. And this, again, from Glenda Green in Love Without End. And she says, "There is no opposite to love. Fear is not opposite, it's merely an alternative." There's no opposite to love. Fear is not opposite, it's merely an alternative. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about where love comes from. And I know I'll be repeating myself a little bit, but we're trying to really drive this point home that it's really innate in all of us, innate in you, innate in everyone. And perhaps I have one theory that we're learned out of it. Yeah, we learn ways to not be loving, to protect ourselves, perhaps. And so I'll come back to that love is innate in each of us, all of us. So other places we might learn about love, there's conditioning, there's experiences that you have, and they maybe provide a reward when you feel connection, like a loving connection, and so then you repeat it. So some of these things might happen through modeling, through, for example, at birth with a mother, if that's how you were born. That can be an influential and powerful first model for most. Certainly it's modeled by our parents or whoever is playing that role in our lives. Whether that's a single mom or a group, or no matter what form it is, they're showing us the way. And it's not just intimate relationships or marriages. Love exists and at least potentially exists in every relationship. And so we want to step away from just the romantic partner, lifelong kind of model for love. That's too restrictive for what we're looking at. And so society is another place we see how is love permitted in our society? How is it expressed? Okay, and so we're going to do some love interferences now. So obviously it's hard at times to express love, to feel loving. And so there are things that can get in the way, and we're calling them love interferences. And we'll talk about fear first. You know, what will someone else think if I say I love you to Andy? Do people, you know, have thoughts about that? Oh, men don't do those kinds of things. They must be something weird. So what will others think? Fear might be a thing that stops us from expressing our love.
Judgment. So whether it's a judgment of another or self-judgment, judgment can get in the way of us expressing our love. You know, one thought we were talking about was like, it's often considered unprofessional to love. So Jim being a model, he's been unprofessional for a very long time. And just by loving all of us in such a beautiful way. And yet, and it's actually one of the most healing things. And yet we can hold such judgment about what professionalism is. We're taught it a lot, especially in licensed professions in the United States or corporate world, stuff like that. We can really be taught that you have to hold yourself tight and not be express love because it's really unprofessional. And then there's judgments that we might have about ourselves, which can get really strong in terms of our capacity to love, or we're not loving enough, or criticize others. We might have judgments about others that block our love.
Yeah, so self-criticism, as Jayne mentioned, so it might be, I'm not worthy of love. Or it might be, oh, that person has to earn all of these things before I can be loving with them. They have to. But yeah, I'm not worthy, so I'm not going to give.
And then betrayal. You know, I'm a very experienced person in this category. But you know, what I found is that betrayal can be such a block. Like if we've experienced betrayals in our life, whether it's in business partnerships or in romantic relationships or in family relationships, it's hard for us to, again, that wall can go up, and it's hard to open again to loving that person, perhaps, or expressing love maybe with that person, but not even if we decided to take that person out of our lives. We still often carry the betrayal within us, and then it's hard to love. Even if it was, for example, a parental relationship, we might have a hard time loving a partner, or having a hard time expressing love for a friend. And so it's really a trust thing of coming back to trusting ourselves and others, and allowing that betrayal to release. But betrayal can be a big barrier to love.
Yeah, and it comes back to some earlier lessons that perhaps we're even in this group, which is I'm not permanently damaged. I'm not, which may come out of a betrayal, a thought that comes out of betrayal. So a next love interference is health. And so if you don't have the energy, if you don't feel well, if it may limit your ability to reach out in a quite literal sense. You know, there's some benefit to having tools like Zoom and telephones and things. We can reach out in more ways, in richer ways than we used to be able to. But yet, if I'm not feeling well, that still becomes you know, too much of a hurdle to overcome. Just a brief story, was traveling with friends out to dinner, and I ate something and it was just didn't agree with me, and I started to feel like my head spinning from this food that I ate. And I'm like, my friends are three other very close people that I've known, you know, for decades, and I can't connect with them in this moment. I'm like in my own body, in my own world of little suffering. Thankfully, it didn't last a long, long time, but it just made clear how health can interfere. I will say, before we leave this, that health can actually be a facilitator to connection and loving, but we'll get into some of that a little bit later.
All right, so loneliness. We can feel like our loneliness, or maybe not feeling deserving of companionship. And so then we get immersed into some of that isolation, perhaps is a better word for, and then it feels like that isolation can become a barrier to loving. Some of us might have experienced that during COVID at an extreme, but it's always been a reality, particularly in our society, is very, very much focused on individualism. And so it can create a thing of not wanting to choose to connect or reach out, and so which can create a loneliness or an isolation, which can develop a barrier. Another one that I think is really a good one to acknowledge, and Glenda Green talks about this in her book too, but I think it's a very important one, that force can be a barrier to love. And it often, we want to kind of manipulate or control the other, and like, maybe if I manipulate this person, my sister, my son, my mother, my lover, whatever it is, if I manipulate them, I can squeeze or control some love out of them. I'll get some love drops. And it really, that comes from, perhaps, I haven't gotten the chance to review the Beautiful Prosperity workshop yet, but I'm imagining it might relate or interplay with that a little bit, in that this belief in lack, our belief in the limitation of love, that love is limited, and there's only this much that I can give, and only this much available for me. So in order to get it, I need to force somebody else to give it to me, or control somebody into giving me those ounces of love, which actually usually pushes the other person away. And then also continues to draw up a wall in ourselves. And so forcing or manipulating can be a really big barrier to love. There's also kind of a belief that I don't deserve love, and so I need to like force it out of another person. If we offer love freely instead, then it tends to expand and grow beyond what we were even imagining possible. And so it's kind of an exciting actual concept, is that the invitation of love as opposed to the forcing of love. Inviting love is allowing for its limitless expansion. It is limitless. We want to do a breakout room, and in the breakout room with your partner, you'll share a love interference I've engaged in is, and a way I can transcend one love interference is. So
All right, just a quick show of hands. Did that go okay? I know that was a rather short activity. People were able to just like, yeah, you were able to get to some good points. Thank you, thank you. Good. Okay. We're going to do a couple more things like that, a couple more rather short breakout rooms, but I'm glad that that's working. This is a great group. They like get right to the heart of it quickly, so I appreciate that.